This video is going to be covering the release date of Update 6.5, Update 7. So there is this thing that I like to call the promise. It is where the ISLE developers make a promise in something coming out before the end of the year. You might have already recognized some examples of this, but if you haven't, let me explain. Near the end of 2021, the developers made a promise. The promise was that humans would be added to the game for players to publicly enjoy or dislike. You might think that this is fine to make a promise and that it keeps the community waiting for just a little bit longer, but it is only the latter of the two. The reason why this is not fine is because the developers flopped it, or in other words, they really messed it up. Kinda. You see, in December 18th, 2021, humans were released to the public. They had a flashlight and they could move around. This was cool at the time because nobody ever had this kind of experience before, but it got boring really quickly because there was nothing to do. It was still cool to have this interaction with dinosaurs, but then the ISLE developers just took it right out in late January. I guess they kept their promise because it was definitely out by the end of the year. Granted, they did say that this was some kind of test for the future, but still, it proves my point. Also, don't worry about this situation particularly, because this is like the worst case scenario. The next example is one that we should actually worry about. When 2022 was coming to an end, Update 6's development was also. The developers once again made the promise that Update 6 would come out before the new year. And this was sort of a mistake. Before we saw what would really come in Update 6, we thought and were told that we would get gore, improved diets, humans, and migration. Instead, what we got was gore, an updated version of diets, humans from 2021, and no migration system. Since they had made a promise, they knew they had to keep it. So to be able to keep that promise, they cut mechanics out and worked slack on their kept ones. The reason why I want to tell you about this is because you're going to need to know what the promise is for the rest of the video. Let's hope that they don't make the promise this year. Immediately when I started this project, I looked for patterns from Update 5 and Update 6's development. This is because Updates 5 and 6 share a very similar development, and it can give me some pretty accurate frames for the final guess of Update 5.6's release. First, I tried finding when the developers posted their first picture or animation on their Discord about update progress and when the update came out. I wanted to find the time range of when the developers felt comfortable about sharing progress on the updates. Update 6 was pretty easy to identify, since the devs never showed anything about the diets in the Discord. All I had to look for was the first gore picture put on the Discord. Their first gore picture was of unpainted organ and bone assets, posted on September 21st, 2022. Update 6 came out on December 23rd, 2022. So, there's a 3-month difference between the dates. So far, this was going pretty well. Contrary to Update 6, it was a little bit more difficult to find a specific date for Update 5's first photographic reveal on the Discord. Update 5 had its first courting animation shown in Phase 3 on January 19th, 2022. This was considered the first nesting system reveal. The first skin system photo appeared in the Discord on March 11th, 2022. This was considered the first skin system preview. After I knew what the dates were, I had to find one single date. This was the hard part. First, I tried finding the average by counting the amount of days in between the dates, dividing the number by 2, and adding it to the oldest date. Though this was an accurate average, I found out that this would not work because that date was before the skin system photo, which makes it an inaccurate representation of when the devs felt comfortable sharing progress. After a little bit of thinking, I went with the date of when the first nesting system photo was shown, because since the skin system is much easier to develop than the nesting system, theoretically, they were at the same progress during that point. This is when the first problem occurred. Update 6's date difference was 3 months, but Update 5's was 7 months. When I had made this horrible realization, I tried to figure out why the difference was so grand by looking at the mechanics both updates had. For Update 5, it would be easy for the developers to remake the skin system from Legacy, but it took a long time for the nesting system because of its new mechanics. Update 6 also had a big update like the nesting system, which was gore. And then it too had an easy one, like the skin system, that was the diets upgrade. These updates were definitely similar to each other, and I was finding no reasoning for my problem. If I was going to get an average, it was not this way. At this point, I didn't know what to do. I was lost. I had already spent an entire day of research, and it meant nothing. So I decided to give up, until I noticed something. While I was drinking cement on the top of a tree, looking at 3 vultures eating the corpse of a deer that I had watched die, I noticed the similarities that Update 5 and Update 6.5 had. First, they both have at least one completely new thing. For Update 5, that's the nesting system. And yes, I know that this was in Legacy, but it was poorly done and didn't have anywhere near the amount of mechanics that Everma's version has. For update 6.5, that big new thing is the Troodon. The Troodon adds a completely new playstyle, with no creatures actually having venom before in the Isle. Second, there's no deadline. When I say that, I don't mean that sometimes some dude gives them deadlines. They give themselves deadlines. Or in other words, they make the promise, which in this case, they won't. Since the updates are near completion, far from the end of the year, the devs would not make the promise. This just means that everything they say is going in the update will go into the update, unless it drags the more prioritized mechanics too much far behind. Also, the update will not come with any slack and will be the best it can be. Hopefully. Third, it took longer than expected. There is no explanation needed for this one. So, now that we know how similar they are, does this mean that it would take 7 months for update 6.5 to come out? No, it does not. While I was just scrolling through the dev blog, I noticed that Hypno said there were only a few issues left for Troodon before it's ready to be stress tested, which is the public testing, if I am not wrong. That means that everything I wrote down and all of the information I collected was for nothing, because the answers were right in front of me. I'm pretty glad this was there, however, because I believe a lot of things I said were invalid because of the development with Troodon. So my guess that I've been calculating for a while is that update 6.5 will go in stress tests in mid to late March and will be publicly released at the beginning of April, which is when the developers go full steam ahead with update 7. I looked back at my notes and saw that update 6 started showing progress 2 months and 8 days after update 5's release. Now, I won't just apply that to update 7. I think that update 7 should start showing progress 3 to 4 months ahead of April, in the summer, because that seems like a reasonable time and it's relatively close to the results of similar updates. This means that update 7 will be showing up in the summer, and we will have some good background knowledge of how it really works. I believe that there is about a 70% chance that update 7 isn't published by mid-December, or maybe late December. Unfortunately, there is a really high chance that the devs will make the promise. But it might not be all bad. What I just said was worst case, and if update 7 is still in development by late December, it is going to be basically completely finished. So though the developers might make a promise, they are most likely going to keep it. Update 7 will start showing cool footage and features and start explaining the update around summertime. Then, Update 7 will come out in late November or late December and keep all of its promised mechanics. In conclusion, Update 6.5 will go in stress test in mid to late March and will probably be fully published by the beginning of April. Then, the developers will be working completely on Update 7. Update 7 will show some good progress around the summertime, and after that, be thrown into stress tests during late November up to late December.